Now to Ohio politics. The results of the primaries there setting up what are expected to be some pretty tight races in a state widely considered a Republican stronghold. So in November, former Republican presidential candidate Vivek Ramaswamy will face off against Democrat Amy Acton for the governor's office. And Republican incumbent Jon Husted will face off against former Senator Sherrod Brown for the open Senate seat. Well, joining me now is MS Now political analyst and former Ohio governor, our friend John Kasich. Welcome back to the show. Let's start with the gubernatorial race, something you're, of course, very familiar with. It has been 15 years since you unseated Ohio's last Democratic governor, Ted Strickland. Does Amy Acton, who served as the state's COVID czar, I guess that's what you call her, does she have a good shot at breaking the GOP streak?
I don't think so. I just don't. And look, remember, when I'm on the air here, I'm an umpire. I just call them like balls and strikes and how I. Look, she's just not going to have the money, and he's going to have a lot of money. And money in this day and age is the thing that dominates. And in this case, I mean, it could be, relatively close, but I don't expect that she can win.
I love it when you're an umpire. That's exactly the role we want you to play. So the Senate race, that's going to be closely watched because it is going to play a key role in which party controls the upper chamber. Both candidates have won this seat before. Does Democrat Sherrod Brown have the edge because of the political environment nationally? Look, he's got the name recognition, too, and that helped him win Tuesday's primary easily.
Well, he was going to win the primary. He didn't have any competition at all in the primary. I think it's going to be very close, and they're going to spend so much money. I would expect that between these two candidates, they're probably both going to approach somewhere close to $100 million. It's going to be an unbelievable race out here. Yeah, they're going to have a lot of money. And I just read that Husted was promised $40 million by one group. There'll be a lot of dark money and irregular money and PAC money and all this other stuff. So, yeah, it's going to be very expensive. And then the question is going to be, how do people feel when we get to November? How do they feel about the pocketbook? I still think it's going to be extremely close. Part of the challenge for Jon Husted is he's got the problems of incumbency, but he doesn't have the advantages because he was appointed. But can he work hard? And he's a hard worker. He's not going to leave any stone unturned. And, and Sherrod Brown's a wily guy, and we'll have to see how the issues play out. But it'll be extremely close. I think we'll be watching that one, Alex, late into the night.
But doesn't Sherrod Brown have significantly more name recognition?
Well, what $100 million can buy you is instant name recognition. So I think he's better known. Husted is not that well known, but he will be. And Husted is now on the air. Sherrod is, he's going to have a lot of money, too. So I just can't give it to anybody right now. I think it's extremely close. And if you look at the polls, they're all within the margin of error.
Okay. So the Trump effect is working its magic across the Ohio border in Indiana. That is where 5 incumbent Republican state senators who pushed back on the administration's redistricting request lost their primaries Tuesday to Trump-backed candidates. 2 others survived. But that was in the primary. Both Ramaswamy and Husted, they have been endorsed by the president. Is that going to help or hurt them in the general election, given independents' recent polling, which gives the president really low marks?
Well, look, the issue, Alex, the big issue that they're all across this country that Republicans are going to face is, are they enthusiastic? Are they going to get out and vote? The Democrats are fired up and they're ready to get out there and vote. And the question is, what about the Republican? The Republican base? Yeah, Trump will help with the Republican base. But what about those that are not too excited about Trump, and certainly the independents? So, my sense is that it can help with that base, but the Democrats are fired up and they're ready to go. And I think that's such a big advantage when it comes to an election. Who's going to get out there and do their thing? And that's a big deal.
What about the extensive redistricting battle? Because that is creating uncertainty big time ahead of the midterms. You have Ohio, which passed its final congressional map in October last year. And since then, nearly a dozen other states have followed suit. So what is your reaction to all of this? Is this going to be the new norm now? Political parties gerrymandering anytime they want to give it a shot?
Well, I hate that, Alex, right? This gerrymandering, it creates a cynicism in the mind of the voters, and it's just a terrible thing. However, let me just say Democrats are wringing their hands over the Supreme Court decision in Virginia. And and now people are speculating, well, are they going to be able to still win? I believe they're going to win the midterms. I believe that they will win the House of Representatives. And I think that these discussions here about this seat here and that seat there, I think it's fundamentally on the margin. I do believe that the Democrats are still in a good position to win. And again, it's all about enthusiasm, which I think their voters are enthusiastic. So, while this was a blow to them in Virginia, I, to some degree, think Democrats are kind of overreacting to this. When I talk to folks that look at this all the time, which I do all the time, I just think there's just too much for the Republicans to overcome for the House.
President Trump certainly struggling to repair his relationship with religious voters after a string of controversies. There's that new poll. It's from Washington Post, ABC News, and Ipsos, which shows 41% of those surveyed have positive views of Pope Leo, of course, whom Trump has publicly criticized. Secretary of State Marco Rubio met with the Pope on Thursday in what appeared to be an attempt to smooth things over. What is your reaction to all of this?
Well, I don't think it makes a lot of sense for a president to be getting into some kind of a battle with the Pope. And, the thing about the Pope is, he's driven by spirituality. He's driven by his faith in God. And he's just not going to battle Trump the same way that, a normal political type might. He rises above that. In terms of the faith community, Trump still has about a 49% approval among the faith community. And that comes, I think, Alex, fundamentally from cultural questions. It comes from the fact that this is binary. You're either for a Republican like Trump or you're going to be for, AOC or Kamala Harris. And I think that's part of why these faith community folks are still for Trump. But I have to tell you, the evangelical community is divided. They have a hard time understanding how somebody who is highly critical of folks, insulting all the time, putting himself on a pedestal, they look at that, they shake their heads. But at the same time, there are a number of them that say, well, look, he's been pro-life and, this is better than what we'd get if we went for the other side. But I think that Trump's support in the faith community over time is eroding. But right now, it's still fairly strong.